am waiting for my case to come up, and I am waiting for a rebirth of wonder. And I am waiting for someone to really discover America. And I am waiting for the discovery of a new symbolic western frontier. And I am waiting for the American eagle to really spread its wings and straighten up and fly right. And I am waiting for the war to be fought, which will make the world safe for anarchy. And I am waiting for the final withering away of all governments. And I am perpetually awaiting a rebirth of wonder.
Well, here we are, the center of the universe, the City Lights bookstore. We publish dissident literature because there ain't nowhere else to get it. Dissident literature, against the grain. The dominant culture being TV and the national security state has to be opposed, or else there'll be no soul left on earth. I did an interview recently and someone asked me, well, why are there so many poets in San Francisco? I said, well, poetry is the dissident branch of literature and San Francisco is the dissident part of the United States. The role of the artist, there's all kinds of roles. There's hot cross buns, there's croissants. Depends whether you want to be a real genteel artist, you want to be a hot cross bun artist, or you want to be a delicate croissant artist. There's all kinds of art and artists. I mean, if you like mustard on your roll, that's another kind. I mean, I think most artists, if they're playing a role, they should put more mustard on it. If you can't cut the mustard, then you're not much of an artist. You see, I have all the latest high-tech equipment. It's what counts. You gotta have a high-tech equipment, you know, or else you can't do anything. High-tech. I might regret this, but the artist always has to take chances, they say. Painting one of those gambling sports, you know. You never can tell where your horse is going to come in or if it's going to come in. My. I thought it was just a landscape. Turns out it's a woman. So there you go again, Mother Earth. What great art requires is hunger and passion. Congress should pass not a Freedom of Information Act, but a new Freedom of Imagination Act that protects arts and all forms of expression of arts in the United States.
Well, we're going to just kind of quickly, we have a suggestion.
Right here?
Okay, how about here?
It's the Youngstown Vindicator. It's like the big paper around here. We wouldn't miss this. That's nice, just like that.
Don't let that horse eat that violin, cried Chagall's mother. But he kept right on painting and became famous and kept on painting the horse with violin in mouth. And when he finally finished it, he jumped up upon the horse and rode away, waving the violin. And then, with a low bow, gave it to the first naked nude he ran across, and there were no strings attached.
I wanted to gather everyone. Not everyone's had a chance to meet Lawrence, and just wanted to express our gratitude to you for coming out to be with us, and of course to sharing your work with us, which is a big treat. And I learned from him that this is, well, he's had many gallery shows. This is his first museum show, and so that's very special to us.
My painting's never been so well displayed. That's not saying much because I've been mostly in bars and pizzerias, but no, it really is a beautiful installation.
first time at the Sixth Gallery in San Francisco in about 1956. The trial was quite a sensation when you read it, because up till then the poetry was pretty dead. Now, I didn't know him well enough to go out afterward with the boys or the girls, so I wrote him a telegram saying, I greet you at the beginning of a great career. When do we get the manuscript to publish, that is? After that Sixth Gallery reading, we published the book within a half year. We were printing in England, and so then it had to come through customs. U.S. Customs seized it, and the local police seized it as an obscene book. Shigeyoshi Mirao, my manager at that time, and myself were arrested for selling the book. So there was a big trial. We had a whole parade of distinguished critics, professors, and well-known poets that testified on the behalf of the book. The judge ruled that the book was not obscene because Howell had redeeming social significance, and we won the case, and thereby we became famous courtesy of the police.
Who's that? Is it Lawrence Ferlinghetti?
Yep.
It is? I thought it was him.
Have a good night. Good filming.
A native-born New Yorker, I was from the Lower East Side, a part of town much favored by poets and Buddhists and their lower chakras, and by hordes of souls seeking salvations in flight from every reality. And no matter where I wandered apart, I always returned to that locality to catch my Sunday subway for the far Rockaway of the heart. Your photographs are like existential moments, you know?
They're existing moments.
Like this one.
Yeah, but it's just a day off on the beach.
I know, but you captured it.
You know what that is, though? What's interesting is the afternoon of the reading in Berkeley.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
The actual reading in Berkeley.
These are Harry Radle's photographs.
Yeah. So it's McClure and Snyder and Rex Roth, I think, was
How
that.
young he looks there.
Yeah.
This is a studio I inherited from Hassel Smith on Mission Street.
Yeah.
This is Harry Radle's wife in the background. There's one of my first paintings.
Oh, first U.S. paintings. So young and optimistic looking.
Yes, so young and optimistic.
You look good there. Yeah. When was this that you had a beard?
I might have been at the Cellar in '58.
Let's go look at your paintings.
It's insurgent art. It's not have a nice day art. It's supposed to disturb the viewer.
I worked on this painting longer than any painting I've ever had. The death of Neil Cassidy at San Miguel de Allende, where Neil died walking along the railroad tracks, and Ferlinghetti Americana. On the back it says, Neil Cassidy, Coxman and Adonis, quote Allen Ginsberg. The back is almost as interesting as the front. I don't think you ever heard this story. One of my brothers was assistant warden at Sing Sing. As assistant warden, he had to witness all the executions. And so among his papers after he died, there was this photograph of the man in the electric chair at Sing Sing, which I silkscreened onto the canvas. And on the back of the photograph, written in pencil, was the instructions to the execution.
Really?
It says, attach electrodes to head, 5,000 volts, man pronounced dead after 2 minutes. Written in hand.
Oh, so the description of the execution, yeah. Now, what was the story of this?
Well, this is called Two Poets at Berlin Wall. when Andrei Voznesensky and I were opposed against the Berlin Wall in 1967. Of course, this stuff wasn't written on the Berlin Wall. Berlin High Jumping Society, Charles Daly, Jump to Freedom.
Hey Kyle, take this shot. Now that's a nice one. Me, Leslie, and if I put my daisy in front. See, I'm always hidden. Yeah, look at that. Alan there now. Shooting Alan. See, hidden again. You don't see my face, you only see my head with a cap.
I was up quite late, helping my son write his paper
Constantly risking absurdity and death. Whenever he performs above the heads of his audience, the poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhymes to a high wire of his own making, and balancing on I-beams above a sea of faces, paces his way to the other side of day, performing entre-shots and sleight-of-foot tricks and other high theatrics, and all without mistaking anything for what it may not be. For he's the super-realist who must perforce perceive taught truth before the taking of each stance or step in his supposed advance toward that still higher perch where beauty stands and waits with gravity to start her death-defying leap. And he, a little Charlie Chaplin man, who may or may not catch her fair eternal form, spread-eagled in the empty air of existence.
My father died before I was born, dropped dead of a heart attack when I believe he was 42. He came over about like in Godfather 2, probably in steerage from Italy, about the turn of the century. His name was Carlo Ferlinghetti. I still haven't found out much about my father's family, except he was from somewhere between Lago di Como and Brescia in Italy. I'm Lombardo.
Mio padre Carlo qui, signor Carlo Ferlinghetti, mio padre. In New York in 1900. To Ellis Island.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we
When Pop came in.
I know, that's why I went there.
Do you know what year your father came in from?
No, see, I was 12 years old when he died. He died very suddenly. I don't know whether Lawrence told you.
Oh, yeah.
Mother was pregnant with Lawrence. And he died in October. And Lawrence was born in March. Our father was in the real estate and auctioneer.
He had an office on
42nd Street. And we lived in Yonkers, which is just north of the city. And we used to take the train. Anyway, this morning, my mother said, you better get down to the basement. And he was sitting there on a cement step like this. And I went upstairs and told Mom, and he was dead. My mother Here she is, 5 kids, no money, and pregnant. And then he comes along. And she went berserk. Charlie, the oldest boy, was going with this girl, and her mother had a boarding house, or we would have been in a orphan home or something. But so this woman took us in, and we lived in the attic. It was a tin roof. And by this time, Larry had gone away with his aunt, or wherever she was.
Our Aunt Emily was French, and she took me to France with her when I was about a week old. We lived near Strasbourg, and I don't think we came back to America till I was about 6. I didn't even know I had 4 brothers at that time. I didn't even know you existed, Harry. Driving a cardboard automobile without a license at the turn of the century, my father ran into my mother on a fun ride at Coney Island. Having spied each other eating in a French boarding house nearby, and having decided right there and then that she was for him entirely, he followed her into the playland of that evening, where the headlong meeting of their ephemeral flesh on wheels hurtled them forever together. And I, now in the back seat of their eternity, reaching out to embrace them.
Coney Island was first published in 1958. The first edition was on cheap newsprint, not many copies. Now it's in the 100th printing. And I read that it's the largest selling book of poetry in the world. It's close to 1 million copies. In the process, it was busted in various parts of the country, once by the American Legion in Woodstock, New York, believe it or not. And my publisher, James Laughlin, had to come up there and assure the American Legion that I indeed was not a member of the Communist Party. Inasmuch as I've always been an anarchist, that's about 180 degrees from communism anyway. The poem that probably upset the American Legion and the Catholic Church the most was the poem on the crucifixion, which was based on a rap by Lord Buckley called the Naz. This was a poem in what was called hip lingo in those days. This is the 50s. Sometime during eternity, some guys show up, and one of them who shows up real late is a kind of carpenter from a square-type place called Galilee. And he starts wailing and claiming that he is hip to who made heaven and earth, and that the cat who really laid it on us is his dad. You're hot, they tell him. And they stretch him on a tree to cool. And everybody after that is always making models of this tree with him hung up, and always crooning his name and calling him to come down and sit in on their combo, as if he is the king cat who's got to blow or they can't quite make it. Only he don't come down from his tree. Him just hang there on his tree, looking real petered out and real cool. And according to a roundup of late world news from the usual unreliable sources, real dead. I wrote the poems in the Coney Island of the mind all at one burst, 56 or 57, in San Francisco. Years later, people come up to me after poetry readings and say, you know, I read your book when I was in high school and I split, or I left home, or changed my life. You'd think it was like Kerouac's On the Road. And I didn't know all that was happening at the time. If I had, maybe I would have split too.
Bixby Canyon Coast Route begins here. We used to come through here on the stagecoach. And right where my cabin is used to be a hotel, a bar, and a trout farm. It's all been torn down. When the highway went in here, the bridge went in, Coast Road stopped getting any traffic, so there's no traffic coming by anymore in here about a mile. So then the hotel had to go out of business, the bar, and the whole works. You can't see my cabin from here. There's a bigger house you can see. This is the place, Paradise North, the Enchanted Valley.
Well, the cabin's still there. Woo! Here is the key that opens up the Magic Kingdom. Hello? Any mice in there? You happy little mice? Well, nobody here. Nobody here but us chicks. This is the dining room table. It's an antique. Here comes the family heirlooms. You don't find this kind of furniture anymore. I mean, I could sell that stuff for millions to some antique dealer. Here's the newer model. This one isn't, that's not as valuable. You see, it's a slightly different filigree on the arms. Otherwise, it'd be a real authentic antique. Look at that. Like the windmill. Look at that. This barrel is full. Or almost full. You want to get shaved? Here you are. Barbasol. Just for you. You need to look in the mirror while you're shaving? I don't think we got the facilities out here. What else is needed? Toothpaste someone kindly left. Toothbrush. Razor. Help yourself. I had to put a sign on my new axe. I leave a tool down here and these city slickers don't know how to use a woodsman's axe. I put a sign on here. Please do not use this axe if you don't know how. Very sharp. I worked in the logging camps in the 30s up in the Adirondack. CCC. They use bigger axes than this. Mr. Chris Felver. I was writing my French aunt when I was 12 years old. That's when I discovered I could really write. She was in France, I was back in New York. And so that's how the first writing I did was to my French aunt, Emily. She answered for a while. I mean, I remember getting letters from her, but then she really went crazy. I don't know whether she had insomnia or amnesia or what. Just disappeared. Never heard from her again. No, nor did anyone else. Emily Monsanto. Jack Kerouac had to arrive by taxi from San Francisco at 4 in the morning with his brakeman's lantern, stumbled around in the meadow trying to find the cabin, and finally flaked out in the meadow. Red Eagle, where we found him the next morning in a full state of meditation with a tête de bois, with a tongue of wood, totally hungover. Essentially came down here to recover from alcoholism. But he didn't have a chance to do that because various beatniks kept showing up, like Neil Cassidy and Michael McClure and me. Kerouac and I were sitting on the beach, and he says, "What does the sea say?" And he had out his little spiral notebook that he always carried. He said, "What does the sea say?" And I said, "Les poissons de mer parlent breton." The fish of the sea speak Breton. And he said, "What was that? What was that?" And I said, "Well, that's an old Brittany proverb. The fish of the sea speak Breton." And he wrote that down in his notebook, and that's on the last page of the book. That's how the novel ends. Hey, Peters. I'm selling books in the Beat Bookshop in Boulder, Colorado. And then Tom Peters, the owner of this bookstore, says that he started the bookstore on $500, just the way we did City Lights. I'm signing books, that's what I'm doing. You know, I want my name engraven in stone.
That'll cost extra.
So you got one of these anyway.
I might have some more in the back. Let me take a look.
These are my rivers. Questi sono I miei fiumi. Ecco, ho ripassato le epoche della mia vita. Questi sono I miei fiumi. I have revisited the ages of my life. These are my rivers. I'm a tugboat captain, kid. Okay, let's be serious.
Talk a little bit about what happened to the Beat movement. It sort of gave way eventually to the free speech movement, which you were very much a part of, Lawrence, and then to hippies, and then to the New Left. I mean, but how did it sort of end?
You could say all the main shibboleths of the 1960s counterculture were first enunciated by the Beats.
Yeah.
I mean, the first ecological consciousness in writers such as Gary Snyder, and the political points of view all became the mainstays of the 60s counterculture.
You think this is a liberated society we live in today?
You have, like my kids, they grew up, they're already liberated by the time they have reached 20 years old. Whereas in my generation, it took us 20, 30 more years to get to that point.
The younger generation, say 15, 14, 15 high school kids, realize that when they get to be my age, it'll be 2050. What kind of world are they going to have to live with? Already, the official stereotype is, quote, diminished expectations, which is a euphemism for saying that the world is going to be a horrible mess, that the ozone layer holes and the brimstone in the atmosphere is going to make life unbearable, that we're running out of water, we're running out of arable land, which is diminishing, species are being killed, there's desertification and deforestation everywhere, and that hyper-technology has led us to an abyss, which may be like an Armageddon, and everybody knows it, from old grandmothers to young kids.
We've talked about ecology and the ecological crisis, but the problem of problems is the overpopulation, and that's you can't solve any other problems until overpopulation is controlled. I've been writing, I get solicitations from places like Greenpeace, or any ecological organization, and what I write back now, I write on the face of the application, you should redirect your efforts to overpopulation control, and because that's below everything else. Nothing else is solvable without solving that. Why are the rainforests being cut down? Population, etc.
What will be the role of the American right wing in that? They'll be trying to keep the United States from participating in some kind of population education and reduction.
Right, on abortion and on birth control. And I think the Pope is in the Middle Ages. I was just in Rome and I was interviewed on this and about this. And I mean, the Pope is being really ignorant and sinful. It's the sinful position he has on population control.
Poets, come out of your closets. Open your windows. Open your doors. You have been holed up too long in your closed worlds. No time now for the artist to hide. Above, beyond, behind the scenes, indifferent, paring his fingernails, refining himself out of existence. No time now for our little literary games. No time now for our paranoias and hypochondrias. No time now for fear and loathing. Time now only for light and love. The revolution of consciousness happened in the 60s with expansion of consciousness. But the political revolution never happened. It was aborted. Like after Kent State, that was the end of it. state clamped down. And Marcuse said it all back then. He said that he talked about the enormous capacity of the dominant culture to ingest its most dissident elements. So you have the counterculture was ingested. The left really has no organs of communication now. In the 20s and 30s, and even in the 40s, the left was powered by the labor movement. And the workforce of the United States was maybe 60-70% unionized. And the labor movement became ingested by the dominant culture, so that the labor movement as a motor for the left doesn't exist anymore.
This is KGNU in Boulder. I'm Marty Derlin, and with me in the studio this morning, we're very pleased and proud to have Amiri Baraka and Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Hello. Good morning. Thanks for being here at the crack of dawn.
We get up early in the city. San Francisco, it's it ain't a leisure class scene there, and so I mean we're riding on the wings of America, you know, still on the western frontier out there, dancing on the edge of the world. It's the left side of the world.
Getting up early.
And you get up early.
Yeah, gotta go to work.
Well, I'd love to begin by asking each of you, do you think a revolution can begin in a cafe, in a bookstore?
A cafe and a bookstore are two different things. I mean, a cafe is a leisure class symbol. Bookstore isn't, hopefully. I mean, the real bookstore is in the old sense of a bookstore, not a too clean, too well lighted place bookstore. But an independent, non-chain bookstore is still the hope of revolution, I think.
Well, I mean, you know, the question of revolution is a question of ideology and organization more than it is place in that sense, except time, place, and condition. But look, we need one, that's for sure. I don't think that artists really believe that art is revolutionary. I mean, there's no politicians that can stand up against poets, for instance. I mean, these people that march around and they're supposed to have so much power because they're politicians. I mean, some young 25-year-old poet could blow them off the globe. I mean, in terms of the sheer touch of what human beings need. And I think we've gotten away from it. I really believe that too many artists believe that we should submit to these politicians in some kind of, you know, way, rather than to fight them with the weapons that you have, that they don't have. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, powerful intellect, words, good ideas.
Exactly.
There used to be an old tradition in American poetry, the anarchist tradition, as exemplified by Kenneth Rexroth, who was a pater familias for my generation when I arrived in San Francisco. It's the anarchist point of view, and the poet seen as a subversive, as the catalyst of change, and the only subversive that really can do anything. And now today you don't see this among poets. It seems to me today they talk all the time about PC, politically correct. PC this, PC that. And they're all PC, but they got no commitment. No commitment to anything.
That's true. That's exactly right. Well, they mean PC as in percentage, Larry.
You got it there, right? I hadn't thought of that. I could read a poem here that fits right into this conversation.
Let's do it.
Our government, a bird with two right wings, directs its flight by hard drive hardware programs not found on the shelves of common retailers. And it doesn't matter who is the pilot of Air Force One. They're interchangeable, stupid. So go ahead and have your little fun and games at each election. It don't matter no-how, Daddy. That bird with the two right wings flies right on from zone to zone, etc. You hear that sound? You don't hear that sound anymore.
The sea is calm tonight off Dover Beach. The birds at dusk cry out syllables of some deconstructed word which we are yet unable to decipher, to explain existence. And they lift the last light with their wings and fly away with it over the horizon. keeping the secret.
I was there, 6 a.m. in the Normandy invasion. Subchaser, SC-1308. Wooden ships and Iron Men. It was a wooden hull ship, 110 feet, smallest commissioned vessel in the U.S. Navy. And it was 3 officers and 30 men against the sea. Men against the sea. We crossed the Atlantic, 26 days, New York to Belfast. It happened, we were being carried over, piggyback. But I was up on the bridge of my own ship, even if the ship was on another ship. Right standard rudder. Full speed ahead. Damn the torpedoes. Full speed astern. Oh, what a lovely war. And now it's all coming out in painting imagery. Storms at sea.
Right after the war, I got the GI Bill and went to Paris.
Well, we were both at the Sorbonne together at the same period, I got a little diploma in French civilization, and he got a very much advanced degree, a doctorate, and I heard him defend his thesis at the Sorbonne on the image of the city in the poetry of T.S. Eliot, which was an unforgettable experience. Neither of us knew we were going to be booksellers. All of us thought we were going to write the great American novel, of course, like everyone else. But I ended up opening this bookstore in 1951 in Paris, and he opened this bookstore in 1953 in San Francisco. And gradually, we got news of each other from our customers because it seemed to have the same customers in both City Lights and Shakespeare and Company. The same people still up in both bookstores all the time.
It hadn't occurred to me to have a bookstore when I was in France. I thought I was going to be a professor. So I went to the University of San Francisco, which is a Jesuit university, and they saw I had an Italian name. I must be a good Catholic. And I got a job there teaching Shakespeare and Victorian literature. I only lasted about 3 weeks because a book had just come out on a homosexual interpretation of Shakespeare's sonnets. This is in the 1950s, and they didn't even want the word homosexual mentioned in the Catholic Church in those days. So I was giving this lecture based on this book. And the head of the department, who was a Jesuit priest, walked in the middle of my lecture. He sort of stood there for a moment, and then he started shaking his head and walked out. And that was the end of my career right there. I got my political education from Kenneth Rexroth. I mean, he really laid it out from the dissident point of view, from the anarchist point of view. He held the Friday night soirees in his house, 250 Scott Street, and that's when the poets would usually show up. There'd usually be a dozen poets or so. Rexroth had read everything and had a regular program on KPFA, where he reviewed many fields, philosophy, geology, astronomy. Listening to KPFA in the 1950s in San Francisco was a complete education, generally from the leftist point of view. And when the war ended, quite a few of the conscientious objectors came to San Francisco, and one of the reasons they came was on account of Kenneth Rexroth and on account of KPFA. I never heard of the beat poets till I came to San Francisco, and after we got the bookstore started, then poets naturally congregate in bookstores, so that when the beat poets came west like a bunch of carpetbaggers, which they were, well, I naturally came to the bookstore. This is like after 53. They were really still on the road in those days.
Been going a long time. Don't know how long. But here we are. Where? Here. Here we are. What is this place? Mountains? White mountains. White mountains. It was a long climb. But here we are. Where? Where exactly? It's hard to say. But can't stay here forever. Or can we? Maybe we can stay here forever. However, one gets bored staying somewhere forever. One has to move on. Right? Yeah. You know, even the mountains get boring after a while. In the White Mountains, these peaks, these sheer ascents into nothingness, these sheer descents into nothingness. You can hear the wind blowing way down there. However, we don't have to stay here forever. We can go up into the White Mountains or down, way down. In the mountains, one feels free, right? Free to go or free to come. If you can't come, you can't go. If you can't go, you can't come. So feel free. Let's go.
I did a painting recently called Arles n'existe plus, my Van Gogh series. In other words, Arles doesn't exist anymore. Where is Gauguin or Van Gogh? Where are they going to go today? If Gauguin goes to Tahiti, he'll have to stay in the Hilton. Those grass shacks aren't there anymore. And if he thinks there's an island still further out, he used to think, oh, there's always an island still further out where we can still get away. But the island further out has a Club Med on it now, at Morea. So that's what this painting was all about. There isn't any away anymore, and the dominant motor force behind this is the American monoculture.
Do you practice meditation?
Well, I'm in a constant state of meditation. If I have any formal activity along these lines, it's lap swimming. I'm a lap swimmer. That's a form of meditation. If you swim for an hour straight without stopping at a slow speed, you get into a rhythm, which is definitely a form of meditation. No doubt about it. And you can get high doing it, too.
Did that butterfly ask me a question? Only the Buddha can ask me a question. This is a steady state of meditation also. Buddha lent me his meditation pillow for headrest. Okay, now I'm prepared to answer questions. I am not a Zen, I'm not a banana, and I'm not a bug, I'm not a bear, I'm not a tree, I'm not a flower. I'm a two-legged creature lying on his back in the sun in the temple of the Zen Fool. This is the forest primeval. the murmuring pines and the hemlocks. This is a Big Sur poem. Upon reflection, night's black mirror is broken. The star crab scuttle away with the inkwell into India. Dawn sows its mustard seed. In the steep ravines and gulches of Big Sur, small animals stir under the tough underbrush. As sun creeps down the canyon walls into the narrow meadows where the wild quail run and cluck, daytime moon, after much reflection, says, sun is God. And the stream, standing still, rushes forward. This poem has been rejected by the New York Times op-ed. It was rejected by Harper's, the New Yorker, and The Nation. Whoa! The Nation evidently has the oldest poetry editor in the world who refuses to publish any poems with political content. That's really ironic for a Nation, the greatest political magazine in the country, or used to be. Buddha in the woodpile. If there had been only one Buddhist in the woodpile in Waco, Texas, to teach us how to sit still, one saffron Buddhist in the back room, just one Tibetan Lama, just one Taoist, just one Zen, just one Thomas Merton Trappist, just one saint in the wilderness of Waco, USA. If there had been only one calm little Gandhi in a white sheet or suit, one not-so-silent partner who at the last moment shouted, wait. If there had been just one, majority of one, in a lotus position in the inner sanctum, who bowed his shaved head to the chief of all police and raised his hands in a mudra and chanted the great Paramita Sutras. When you consider the television audience as millions and millions of people at any given minute during the day, and you take all the print media together, it might amount to less than 1% of the total audience, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all those. And then when you take which part of that is the leftist press, that's even smaller than maybe 1/1000th of 1% is the leftist audience, or who's reading the leftist press in this country. Anarchism requires a human being who is an enlightened human being. So it's just an ideal anarchism. Capitalism is the most wasteful system in the world as far as ecology goes. So you have to have a worldwide planned ecological economy, and that's a You can say, well, that's socialism. Well, you can't have that. But that's what's needed. You also need worldwide population control of some kind. And in order to get that, you have to have a form of socialism. But the term socialism should be jettisoned because it's too rated semantically to be of any use these days. As soon as you say socialist, everyone has a knee-jerk reaction against it. Real socialism has never been given a chance except in Scandinavia.
Poetry. You do? I used to sit in the Mexico City bus stations reciting Ferlinghetti's poetry for amusement in 1968. It worked. I still dig it.
Great honor to be here, seeing the civic and poetic come together in this bright, luminously detailed peopled streets of San Francisco and a city of poesy. Thanks so much in part to the efforts and energies of Lawrence Ferlinghetti. So great honor to be here. And I'm just going to read the last lines of his populist poet manifesto. Poetry still falls from the skies into our streets, still open. They haven't put up the barricades yet. The streets still alive with faces, lovely men and women still walking there, still lovely creatures everywhere, in the eyes of all the secret of all still buried there. Whitman's wild children still sleeping there, awake and sing in the open air. Thank you, and love to you, Lawrence.
I wanted to mention a little about this Price Row that is losing its name from mine. I find out by talking to the boys at Coney Hardware who grew up here that during Prohibition, Price Row was where the bootleggers' trucks backed up. And also, it was the back door of an undertaker's. So we had bootleggers' trucks and hearses. It's a fitting place for poets to hang out, right? Now here comes the really serious part of my discourse. 77 years ago, my father set forth upon this continent and ended up in Yonkers. I was 30 before I saw San Francisco for the first time, and I've spent most of the last 40 years walking up and down the streets of little old wooden North Beach. The map of North Beach stamped upon my brain pan. I know the streets and alleys around here like the palm of my hand, to coin a cliche, as most of you do. And it's truly unbelievable to have a tiny line in that palm named after me. I want to thank all who, to carry on the metaphor, had a hand in this dastardly deed. Especially my immigrant parents. Vorrei ringraziare tutti e anche i miei genitori immigranti. Grazie.
This is the way San Francisco should be, Lawrence. This is the way San Francisco should be. Amen.
Yeah, it's like something from a long time ago.
Yeah, I like it. Absolutely. He didn't even have to die. 1, 2, 3.
Yes, the world is the best place of all for a lot of such things as making the fun scene and making the love scene and making the sad scene and singing low songs and having inspirations and walking around looking at everything and smelling flowers and goosing statues and even thinking and kissing people and making babies and wearing pants and waving hats and dancing and going swimming in rivers on picnics in the middle of the summer and just generally living it up. Yes, but then, right in the middle of it, comes a smiling mortician.